Thank you so much for coming to check out another episode of the Stashcast, where we have interesting conversations with interesting people focused on the world of commercial real estate and prop tech. The Stashcast is brought to you by Needle. What if you could use data and analytics to predict real estate transactions? You can with Needle. Come check it out at Needle, NEDL.us to learn more. All right, today I am super excited. We have the one, the only DJ Hume. DJ,
Love it.
thank you so much for coming to join me. Little does anybody know is that I was supposed to have you earlier in the year, and then life just got in the way and I canceled, and that was my fault. So I will own that, but I'm super excited to have you, and thanks for coming.
Man, I love just getting a chance to hang out with you and talk a little bit about real estate. I always
Y-
learn something.
Yeah. So for the folks at home that don't know, you're the founder and managing principal of Prosper Capital. Why don't you give maybe a little bit about who you are and what you do, and then we can roll from there.
Yeah. So just a quick elevator pitch. So Prosper Capital, we're based out of Cincinnati. We are a vertically integrated real estate investment firm. Prosper Capital is our asset management arm. We also have Prosper Communities, which is our property management arm that does in-house property management, but also service. And then Prosper Construction, which is our capital improvement arm, where we do our value add, more like unit turns or exterior work, where we more or less do the GC work and manage that. So 3 entities within Prosper Capital.
Okay. So you've got Prosper Capital, which is the asset management, Prosper Communities, which is your property management organization, which basically just manages for Prosper Capital, right? And then
Yes.
it was Prosper Construction.
Yep.
Nice. Why did you set it up like that?
To be quite frank, I didn't want to. So
Hmm.
some background was when I got into real estate, I just happened to fall into property management. I started when I was 22. I'm 32 now. And I started managing my own real estate when I started. I've never used a third party manager. And
Hmm.
then when we got into the commercial space, one thing led to another, and we started to grow the property management arm. So that then led into heavier value add deals that we started to purchase, and I had to figure
Hmm.
out how to manage those as well.
Okay. Interesting. That makes a lot of sense. So you started at 22. How did you get into it? And this is politely, how did you have the courage to get into it at 22? Because I started in my 20s as well, and I was like, I acknowledged that I had no idea what I was doing.
Yeah, so I was definitely going against the grain, but that's probably how my career has always been to a certain degree. When I got out of college, I started in a small kind of startup medical device. I was in sales for the first, I don't know, 7 years of my career. And again, I found out that a lot of people were in real estate that were doing really well and had a lot of freedom. And I also didn't have any benefits. So I had to figure out something else. Being in a startup, I didn't have a 401k, any of those pieces. So
Mhm.
I also saw real estate and single family as my segue into having my own benefits.
Okay. So did you start like house hacking, or what did that look like?
Yeah, basically first 5 years, my first house was in Springboro, Ohio or Dayton, and it was an $80,000 house, 2 bed, 1 bath that was a house hack before house hack was really a term. Went in, we bought that. I think I had to put maybe 10,000 down, maybe a little bit less. But at the time I was working full time, crushing it. I was making like 35,000 a year. So I could just get past paying like all my bills and I might be able to afford pizza. So I thought it was a good idea to buy a house. And then I was basically working all day, 9 to 5, spending 5 to 10 doing all the work. I had to lure in my dad and bring in a beer for my friends, fix up the kitchen, fix up the bathroom, do a new roof, all these things that I learned through that experience over about a year that one, I hate it.
Yeah.
Two, I'm terrible at it.
Yeah. I grew up working for my dad. He was a one-man contractor essentially from me growing up. And it just caused me so much anxiety to like, and maybe it's just working for your dad. Like maybe that's what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's not a way I want to spend my time, but good for you. So I'm curious, what lessons from that early part of your career have maybe carried through and you still abide by or are reminded of?
Yeah. So after that first property, continued to house hack to a certain degree, but rather than fix them up, I then bought basically a turnkey house. From 22 to 26 or so, I was buying a house every 6, 8 months. So by the
Wow,
time I was 25, 26, I had 5 houses.
that's awesome.
Um, from the outside looking in, I'm crushing it.
Mm,
Interior, well, we had some good deals that pretty much all rented, but we're only making a few $100 per property. Not
yeah,
life-changing money, not anything close to where I can actually retire.
sure.
Um, I had really 2 main lessons when I came out before I flipped into the commercial side. The first was I had a rental that the HVAC went out. It was installed wrong, and it cost me about $5,000. That wiped out not only the cash flow of the year for that one single family house, but all the cash flow that I had for my entire portfolio. That was my first
Wow.
lesson. I was like, "Man, there has to be a better way." Then my second lesson was my final single family house that I ever bought. I think I bought it for $20,000 cash. Again, still working full time, still crushing it, making maybe 40,000, 50,000 a year now.
Mhm.
I got a few years under my belt, but I did not I was doing a full flip. It was my first time doing it, doing the GC piece of it. I had a $40,000 budget. I was paying everything cash. So I was gonna essentially be $60,000 all in when it's all said and done. And the goal was to be able to sell it for 80, 90, maybe 100, depending on the market. This was my first time getting into the GC world. I had to fire my first contractor, stole $5,000 right off the rip of a
Jeez.
$40,000 budget. That's a pretty good chunk of change. Then my second contractor came in, but I was a side job. So what was supposed to take a month, we were now on month 3. So now I have holding costs.
Right.
Had to fire them, had to bring in the third contractor. So you get the piece. I was about of a $40,000 budget. I'm about 25, 30,000 in, and I am maybe halfway done. I am sitting
Mhm.
there thinking, what the hell am I going to do? So I had to get creative. I had to figure it out. I was working full time. And again, I was taking my entire paycheck, putting into this to figure this out. That was my first lesson into the construction side. But that was also my last single family deal where I was like, that's it. I got to do something else and really started to focus in on multifamily.
Okay. Wow. What was that? A two-bedroom? Like a two-bedroom, one bath or something?
Yep.
Yeah. Damn. Huh. So how did you then transition into multifamily?
I was looking at it for quite some time. I probably looked and was learning about multifamily for about a year, 18 months. You probably don't remember those days, but that's when I was LinkedIn messaging you and being like, hey, man, I'm an investor. Why don't you respond? But rightfully, you shouldn't respond because I had no clue what I was doing or talking about. But I ended up getting lucky where here in Cincinnati, I was living downtown and I was able to buy. This is when apartments were still on the MLS,
Mm,
maybe 2017, 2018, and I was able to buy an 8 unit in OTR for about $800,000.
that's not bad.
Yeah, so it was, first time into the multifamily side. I looked at probably 100 deals up to that point. Whether I walked them or not, that's a different story, but I was
Mhm.
underwriting it. I was doing a lot of practice. So by the time I found this one, I was really comfortable and as confident as I could be to get it. This was also the same time that my parents and everyone else saw me build up this single family portfolio. So
Mhm.
I had a lot of people reaching out, asking me about real estate at that point. And so I also did my first kind of partnership or JV, where not only me, but I also brought in 3 investors and we raised, $250,000 and we're able to buy this 8 unit.
Okay. And did you do a full renovation on that as well, or just a value add? How did that go down?
It was just a turnkey. So we still own
Okay.
it today. It was already done. It was just rents were below market. So we're able to increase rents, be able to do some improvements like LED lights,
Mhm.
painting and other things like that. Manage it a little bit better. So no heavy lift at that point.
Mhm. Huh. So one of the things that I want to talk to you about, and maybe this is the right time or maybe not, is you do a lot with virtual assistants. Like you've got your whole, you and I were talking over the summer, and you're like, I have my whole setup basically where it's just all VAs. So are we too early in the story to get into that? Or when did you start incorporating those folks into your business?
I'll set the stage. So from 8 units on the multifamily side, again, I'm still self-managing,
Yeah.
to today where we have, I don't know, 550 units or so. And that's from basically 2018 to today. So we've had some, I would say, relatively rapid growth. I didn't hire anyone for the first 100 units. I was managing it all myself, just figuring it out. I wasn't
Yeah.
ready to hire anyone. Then we started to acquire larger assets that required a team. We and eventually brought in a service team and some of those other things that we talked about earlier. Um, but I also realized that a lot of that I was still doing all the admin work, right? It was me doing the leasing. It was me doing the applications and everything. So probably about 3 years ago, I realized that I had to do something different. And how we're structured, or at least how I got off the ground, was I had no management fees or very minimal management fees. That was a way to build trust with my investors, my partners, and figure it out and really give them an opportunity to trust me. So I had very little cash coming in from a management perspective. Say
Mhm.
I'm supposed to be charging the property 7%, I might be charging 2%, 3%, just to get in the door and be able to continue to grow. So no budget, pretty much. So I had to really get creative when it came to the admin side if I wanted to take myself out of the business. I definitely couldn't afford bringing someone, a property management or a leasing consultant here locally and be able to afford them. So that's when I had to look at alternatives.
So I'm just trying to wrap my head around that because, but I get part of me is how do you train up somebody that you never actually interact with? But then on the other hand, we're in 2024 now, and 2020 really spurred everybody like work from home and the comfort of remote work.
Yeah.
So I guess maybe you rolled or rode that wave or it transitioned into your favor.
Yeah. I think that naturally we think that is a good fit, but when it comes to our remote teams, like we staff all over the world. Our kind of few main hubs is Mexico, the Philippines, and some other countries like that. So let's put ourselves in their shoes. They've probably never been to the US, specifically not Cincinnati. They
Mhm.
have no clue how the rental market works, how residents expect to be treated. They might just be learning English, right? So you really have to take them from the ground up. Even if they know how to use a computer and some of these remote tools, like you're really starting from scratch. That's probably what makes it a little bit different. So, full disclosure on the remote teams, when I started to get into that, I failed about 20 times. I hired all kinds of people, brought them on, right? Showed them what to do, figured hey, you'll be trained in a few days. I was going through them left and right. So, it wasn't an overnight success by any means.
Mhm.
Um, so when I eventually was about to be, all right, this remote thing is not working. Like it is not for me. I was about to tap out. And I met with some of my friends and really they told me is maybe DJ, you're the problem. Like you're training someone in a day or two and expecting they're going to know everything. And that frankly was the truth. I wasn't building a platform for success to then bring in a remote team member or members to be successful and build off of that, right? There was no foundation there. I was showing them a few things and I was done. So that's when I really recreated my mindset and our platform. I actually built out an entire online web based, what we call an internal wiki, where
Mm.
we actually document every single process as it relates to our property management business
Hmm.
from leasing, like how does when a guest card comes in, what are the questions that you ask? How do you ask them? What happens after you ask them? How do you put that into your PMS system and where is that held? Every single detail. So if I was to take you through our SOP, you would see a step-by-step instruction with a screenshot, and then you'd actually see at the very end a 5-minute Loom video of how we did that.
Oh,
And we
wow.
did that for every single process that I could think of in the
Yeah.
business. Um, and that was the foundation I didn't have, and was really setting themselves up for failure prior.
Yeah.
So I started to build out this wiki platform, which then doesn't matter if they're remote or locally here in Cincinnati or somewhere in between. I now have a standard SOP that's an interactive platform that I can then send a link to someone and say, hey, go check this out and let me know what questions you have.
Mhm. And then how do you like direct message with them? Is it like WhatsApp or Slack or something like that?
Yeah, so we're a Google Suite house, and then we use
Okay.
Slack as well. So it's all integrated in SSO to a certain degree. So we have constant communication through Slack and through phone. So no one ever feels like they're really on an island. But also, when it comes to our remote employees, we have their own platform where they clock in and clock out, and it
Mhm.
actually monitors their usage. So I can actually go in and see, it takes a screenshot of their screen every 10 minutes. The system actually gives them a percentage of how active they are based off the rules that I initially put. I can put, these are the websites we should be using, right? These 10 websites. And based off that, it tells them how, if they're using core work or non-core work, a percentage of activity along with screenshots. So I can really get a really quick picture of if
Hmm.
someone's actually working. Because if someone's working, but they're not producing, they probably aren't trained well enough.
Mhm.
But if I have the platform and they say that, oh, I'm getting all these things done, I can actually go back and say, are you actually working? So
Right.
it allows that there's enough transparency there that I can continue to figure out who's the best remote team member for us, be able to really groom them and grow them into being a property manager for us.
Hmm. So it sounds like it took a decent amount of time to sit and identify what the processes are and then um, map them out. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's just our internal wiki. I had to sit there pretty much for 6 weeks straight, every day, all day, think
Mm.
about processes. Think about,
Wow.
'cause I know what I'm doing, but
Sure.
I never put that on paper. So I had to go almost recreate our entire business myself to start, and then figure out what's a process to continue to grow this.
Mm.
And then if I bring someone in, especially from another country, how am I gonna manage them and set them up for success? How do I make sure that they understand our culture and how people should be addressed and how we answer the phone? And do they expect a phone call after a text message? Or here in Cincinnati, most people don't want to be contacted by phone. They want to text. So I have to teach them that.
Interesting. Did you sit with somebody to help you walk it through? Because I would imagine that for myself, I have ADD and I'm dyslexic, and I would need some help with that. Or did you just sit and plow through it and really just think it out?
Really, I was just very dedicated to it. And my
Mhm.
thought process was, hey, I'm doing this management thing already by myself,
Sure.
especially the administrative side. And my thought was, whenever I do something, I'm going to spend an extra 5 or 10 minutes and I'm going to record it. All
That
right.
makes sense.
And then drop it in there. And then I'm going to come back later and probably put like the key steps that are important to that. And I would do that. So I was very specific on making sure I spent a little bit extra time. It was super annoying to do for 6 weeks, but
Mhm.
then I was able to figure out, okay, how do we actually do this? How do we document? How do we wanna follow these and build out a structure? And actually, once we did that and I was able to roll that out and bring on, our RTM team to do that, they actually started to take that and put it into their day-to-day. So they actually built out majority of our SOPs that we have today. They recreated them, built them, made them better.
So they saw what you were doing and they said, "Oh, this is great, but now what about if we did it this way?" And you're like, "Yeah, that's a great idea. That makes a
Yeah.
lot more sense."
Yeah, the database and the system of how it works is essentially let someone go in, update the SOP. It actually sends me a notification and says approve or deny. So I can actually see what it was, what
Mhm.
the new one is, and I can accept it or deny it. Then I can also put settings in there and give it to an RTM where we need to review it every month or quarterly or annually, and it'll tell us if an SOP's kind of expired.
Hmm. Wow, that's fascinating. Because I have fallen off on the podcasting since coming over to Cushman, and I was on a roll for a bit, but it got to a point where I was like, I don't have the bandwidth to do the scheduling, and I can turn things around pretty quickly, but it's a lot. So I've been wondering with the podcasting and with Needle and brokerage, sometimes like my days will just be filled with emails. I know that I have 140 emails at least in my inbox right now that need some sort of attention. And some of it is just move it into the right folder, but some of it is, yeah, we actually need to do something about that.
Yeah. And that's what's great about a business model like this. It's not just property management, it's anything. Give you an
Hmm.
example that might help you is I was living in my inbox and I was just emailing all day. So I
Yes.
actually I implemented this process with my assistant, and now she'll go through my emails and put, do I need to respond to it today, this week, or not? And so that's a filter that she's already going on my behalf. So then I'm just focused on today or this week. So
Oh
it
my
helps me
God.
be more efficient.
Yeah. I love that so much. That is amazing.
Yeah, because how many emails do you actually get that need a response or that are immediate response, right? Or do I need to just unsubscribe from this?
Sure. Yeah. Is it no longer adding value that you thought it might?
Yeah.
But deal emails, those need to be responded in a timely fashion, but just
Mhm.
other things like, yeah, I'll get to that when I get to it. And,
Exactly.
I end up with 50 unread emails that I'll get to it eventually. But
Yeah, and that eventually never comes, and then mark them all as red for a
right.
couple months later, and you start over. So
Yeah. And it's, oh, sorry. Yeah. I'm just going to let that fall apart.
exactly, exactly.
Well, that's awesome. Fascinating. I'm probably going to ping you about this again offline because I do need to find just a way to essentially multiply myself because I just have so much going on. It's a lot.
That's what I found. I couldn't be, everywhere, and part of that is then you can start to train up for a relatively low basis or low salary. They're anywhere between 8, 10, $12 an hour, right?
Hmm.
And they can do 80% of the work and just really flag the important stuff for you and
Right.
really keep you on, make sure that they're managing your calendar, make sure that they're managing the inbox for you. Makes a world of difference and lets you focus on what's most important, generating revenue.
That's awesome. So switching subjects a little bit, you just merged with some partners, didn't you?
Yeah, Compounding Capital Group. They were really an asset management group here in Cincinnati with Jay. So they have been kind of partners of ours for the last 2 years or so. They did not have property management or construction in house. So we partnered on a deal about it 2 years ago. Worked out really well. And then
Didn't we
since
sell that
then,
to you?
did.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's worked out well, and then we've done a few deals since then. They were really missing the management side. They had
Mhm.
third-party managers, and it just wasn't going well.
It's a third party management's a really tough business. Like I've been approached by people in the past of, oh, let's start a management company together. And it is the most thankless task out there.
Sure is.
Um, you've got owners on one side who don't want to spend any money because they're trying to generate cash flow. And it's not malicious necessarily. But then you have tenants on the other side who are dissatisfied for whatever reason. And you're just stuck in the middle trying to make a fee. It's almost like the management companies don't actually make any money.
You hit the nail on the head, they don't. It's hard to make money on 7%, right? When you got
Sure.
probably 5% of that is overhead.
Mhm.
Right? Worst like, best case scenario. And then if you wanna add any additional heads, it's in between, but then you're trying to provide a good service, right? Everyone wants to provide a good customer service experience, which means if I wanna make a resident happy, I gotta go above and beyond. If I wanna go above and beyond, I need to hire additional people to be responsive. There goes my 2% margin because then now I have extra overhead on people.
Yeah, you wanna be able to exceed expectations,
Yeah.
and you can't do that on too tight of margins. That's why you see a lot of these smaller third-party managers fail, essentially,
Yeah. Yeah.
or they're just working their butt off for nothing, you
Uh,
know?
I found you can't provide a good service and make money. Like
Right.
those 2 don't go together. So you either got to make money and you're going to provide a terrible service or
Mhm.
subpar service at best, or a great service and you're going to break even or lose a little bit money.
So, how did you scale up from the 8 unit to, the deal that we did together, and then we have another one that we're working on with one of my partners, and then you have the deal out in Batavia that you guys just and that's a great deal. I love that property. Like, I remember
Yeah.
when the previous owner had it, and then they sold it to the housing authority, and then I saw that you guys had it under contract. I was like, "Oh, man, that's a great property." So
Yeah.
how have you scaled up?
Very naturally, I'd say we bought that 8 unit and then 6 or 8 months later, then we bought a 10 unit. And then right after that, we bought an 8 unit. So within an 18-month span, we went from none to what is that? 25, 30 units or so.
Mhm.
So it's very natural progression, right? And I was at the same time then selling off a lot of my single families. So really it was that snowball effect where I just had to get in, right? And figure it out and then start to build some trust around individuals. And then I had to really start building out relationships with you and other people in the
Mhm.
Cincinnati area and get my name and out there. So we just naturally started capturing a 10 unit or a 20 unit every 6, 12 months and things at that point. There was a lot of transactions going. So there was a lot of availability. You just had to be
Yeah.
quick on it. So
Yeah.
that was the big piece. We were quick. I would underwrite something and we were ready to put in an offer that day.
Oh, yeah, that's huge. Because 'Cause I'm sure you probably learned early that, "Oh, I'll get to it in a couple of days," and then you come back to it and it's, "Yeah, sorry, it's gone."
Gone.
Especially if
Exactly.
it's a good deal, if it's priced right.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say so that was a very natural progression of those where I'm gonna call those like value add deals, but we weren't doing construction or minimal construction, right?
Mhm.
What really took us to the next level was we bought, you probably remember, 24 unit in Milford, which was just a dilapidated apartment complex.
Yeah, I do remember that deal, right, like, behind Lowe's or across from
Yep.
Lowe's. Yeah.
Yep. And that was,
Wasn't that owned by a family out of Texas or something like that?
no, local
Okay.
family. But this was my first true value add that required renovations that I was gonna be doing myself.
Mhm.
And I wasn't exactly sure what to do, so I had to get really uncomfortable, but I stuck to the underwriting and what I knew best. Rents on average were 600 a month. There, the average rent at that point was 900 or $950, so I had a big delta there. They
Wait,
had a
what was
lit
the market rent?
950,
And what were rents at?
600 average.
That's a good deal.
Yeah,
But it's a
eh,
lot of work to get to that.
very much. So I knew I had that, and I was super nervous because although I saw that delta, I saw these renovations and I saw that as an asterisk of what's this actually gonna cost me? Is this 5,000 or is this 20,000? I wasn't sure.
Mhm.
But I was willing to bet on myself to make it happen, and I was in the business long enough that I was like, "You know what? I can make this work."
Yeah.
Not exactly sure how this is gonna work, but me being if it goes bad, I'm there, I'm gonna make sure whatever happens, it's on me, and I make sure it works out. So, of course, I did as much due diligence as possible, but when it comes to construction, unless you've done it before, it's
It's the
tough.
Wild West. I'm
Exactly.
in the midst of it now over in Camp Washington, and we're getting there, but it's everything thing with real estate and especially construction is it takes longer and costs more than what you think it will.
Every time. It doesn't matter how much work or due diligence you do. It's every time. So, we ended up acquiring that. Again, that was a very similar deal. We bought that for 1,500,000,
Mhm.
um, with some, capital, budget for it to do renovations. I was gonna slowly turn the units as we needed to, so I did 3 units at one time. Learned a lot. I was doing all my own material and things like that, so I was in the weeds. I was figuring out which shower kit, what tile are we gonna buy? So I was putting everything down. I was making sure we were as efficient and effective with every single dollar that we spent. I had a little bit of construction background from my single family that went terribly bad. I knew I could get through it, so then I had to bring on some contractors. Any new company that's trying to figure out contractors, that's always a tough. There's no
Mhm.
magic wand. You just have to make sure you're on top of them and making sure you're keeping them accountable. So, of
Yeah.
course, we went through our fair share of contractors before we could really find one that would work. I was still acquiring the material, dropping that off almost every day. So I was there almost every single day. So I'm really a GC, while on the other side, I'm actually increasing rents for the other 21 units. And I was able day one to move that from 600 to 800 on
Nice.
day one while I renovate these apartments. Um, Took longer than I wanted, but when we got those done, they turned out really nice. And I think that we ended up renting those for 925 plus rub, so we were beating pro forma on our very first unit that we finished, and that
Nice.
was like the lightning in a bottle was like, "Damn, alright, this sucked. This took longer than I wanted. This was a lot of work, but what we set out to do, what we said we could do with our investors, we just achieved." then comes the negative of, "I just gotta do this 23 more times."
Right. I'm sure that though that there were some lessons that you were able to glean from that and standard operating procedures with even the renovations and things like this is what we're gonna do and or this is what we're not gonna do, things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So we for that property specifically, like, after you did a few, I had that exactly what we wanna do. It was not a well-oiled machine. I did not have the accountability set up from a contractor standpoint, which
Mhm.
was our biggest variable, but I needed to learn those lessons early and figure that out to make sure that we could do it, so then I could start to build the SOPs and processes that would let us scale into something.
In my project, I've got one main I'm the GC technically, but I have one
Yeah,
main guy, and he's the one that goes out and finds all the subs, and they're all within the same community.
mhm,
And we had this agreement where he's, I'm going to try and get you the best price that I can because I see that this is a big project and there's a lot of money to go around. But also I've expressed my vision for the rest of the neighbor and the neighboring property and throughout the neighborhood. And so trying to figure out how to appropriately structure maybe a partnership or something with him, but that's been how I've been operating and it's
yeah.
been good so far.
Yeah, taking that lesson from that first deal and then building off of construction, that kind of construction arm that was built from that project.
Mhm.
Now, we fast forward to today, I have a project manager who actually goes out to the field, checks on projects, and in real time will take pictures of what project and scope of work that we have. And I can actually see on my computer as he's there, the pictures and videos being uploaded. So that's where that connectivity from a field into the office and vice versa
Mhm.
really builds that strong connection, but also most importantly, holds our contractors and subcontractors accountable, right?
Mhm.
Because now we're documenting this in real time every few days in a database that we can reference to. So when we
Right.
go and say, "Hey, staff, you said this was going to be done on Friday. Here's what it looked like on Monday, Wednesday, and today. What happened?" Right? We have facts to go back with it. Whereas normally with contractors in general, it's a he said, she said, or this
Sure.
happened and I had an excuse, right? So now
Yeah.
we have a full documentation process that's helped us build a lot of our projects to maybe not necessarily always stay on budget, but to the as much as we can stay within the original time frame that we're hoping for.
Yeah. That makes sense. Do you build out like Gantt charts for every project or the software that you
Mm.
use or a
You know,
timeline?
I've tried the very complex project management systems
Mhm.
and Gantt charts and do this and then that.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of them really look good on paper or on a computer,
Yeah.
but in reality, like one deadline is missed and then everything doesn't work out. So we've actually gone to a very simple card process, is what we call it, where we just put we have 5 buckets. I'm gonna have to pull it up because I don't remember what those buckets are, but I have it right here.
While you're
Um,
doing that, I'm just remembered of I think it was Mike Tyson and Matt Light from the Patriots who said, "Everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face."
exactly right. Exactly right. Yeah. So like I spent hours trying to put like, oh, we're gonna do drywall and then we're gonna put paint and then we're gonna do flooring and then this is gonna be perfect. We're gonna get it done in 10 days. That never happens.
No.
So
But
so we moved to a really simple process and I'll just take you through like our 5 or 6 buckets. So we call it
sure.
pre-construction, estimates, procurement, construction. So that's when they actually start the work, post-construction, complete.
Mhm.
That's as simple as we wanna make it. Pre-construction is we know a tenant's moving out, and we know we have to do a renovation 60 days before we go and do an inspection and put together our scope of work and put together our material list. We
Yeah.
then go get estimates if it's required, and we spend about a week to do that. In theory, now 50 days from when this resident's gonna be moving out, we already have a scope of work, a material list, and estimates done. That then moves us to the third stage of procurement. We're now buying the material and saying, "Hey, we don't need this until December 1st. Go ahead
Right.
and put it all together, get it all done, have it ready to go, and then come delivered on December 1st."
Mhm.
Once that's delivered, that then triggers our construction phase. Depending on we have standard, turns we go We call them bronze, silver, gold, or platinum. And
Hmm.
we know roughly, depending on which one it is, how long that renovation should actually take. So let's
Right.
just take our platinum, for example. That's about a 14-day turn. If you get it on the first, they start construction on the first. They have about 14 days to complete just the construction phase, right? And then they move to post construction, which is when we go and inspect it. We do punch out, we do touch ups, we do the cleaning and move it to complete.
I love that. I think that's great.
So
I'm stewing on it.
it's it's enough buckets to watch the process, watch it progress,
Yeah.
but it's not too detailed to get into the weeds of it, right?
Yeah. And that's a fine balance, I think, is
Yeah.
not getting sucked because it's easy to get sucked into the weeds. Like when I built my initial construction budget and pricing, I had here's how much for blinds, and then here's how much to install blinds in each of the units. And that's just too much, I feel like.
Yeah, it's tough, very tough. So
Interesting.
now within that bucket of each bucket, again, imagine it's a card that moves across like we that it's only because that's exactly how ours is set up. It's essentially a virtual whiteboard. And then that card, we make comments multiple times a week on that. When it's in the construction phase, we would say, okay, hey, contractor said that they're demoing today and they're doing drywall and paint tomorrow, and then they're going to do flooring on Wednesday. That's documented on that card. When we come back to it later this week, we're going to see that note and they're going to
And
say,
it's
you
Thursday
said
and they haven't
this.
done flooring. It's guys, this is what we agreed to.
Yep. And then we say, okay, why is it okay? Flooring was supposed to be yesterday, but now what day do you want, is it going to be? Right. So I now have a activity board of where it was and every single piece along the way. So if I need to refer back to our notes and our kind of conversation, it's within that too.
Hmm. I like that a lot. Yeah, I've found myself in this just real heavy construction thing, and I want to do the neighbor, which is going to be still a hard turn, but hopefully not as hard. But it's my goal with that neighborhood is to get some critical mass and then be able to just roll and kind of prove to the rest of the neighborhood, hey, you should work with me as a way to revitalize the neighborhood. Um,
Yeah,
so, do you still have the property down there in camp?
I do. Yep.
Let me know when you want to sell it.
It's actually one of our best performing assets that we have out there on a door to door basis, but it was a painful one to get started.
Yeah, I remember you told me that this summer.
Yep.
So what's the goal of all this? You've got and it might be a silly question, but what are you trying to accomplish? Do you want 10,000 doors? Do you want just Lamborghinis, Ferraris? Do you want just a lake house? You already have that. But maybe a house in the mountains? I don't know. What are you trying to accomplish?
That's a good question. And I think that originally when I got into it, especially real estate, it was how do I be rich and be able to buy whatever I want? And and I think that shifts over time. And as we grow, my goals have also change. Now I would say it's being able to build a sustainable business and multiple business really that can build, one, have a great culture, but build great residents, have this well-known community of residents that really value us and what we do. But at the same time, employees have a great culture and kind of nucleus of people where people love to work and that sense of community. So that's one big piece. But in addition, is as we grow, being able to bring more investors into what we're doing, I found that there's a huge market and need for people that are looking to deploy capital that don't know how to do this or have the systems in place,
Right.
but but want to work with people like us, people that have not just raised capital, but people that have put the time, the blood, the sweat, the tears into the processes that not many do. And I found that there's a huge need or void right now in the marketplace to partner with groups like us that have done that to then be able to build up these really great communities that then can provide a great return for investors. So it's a win on both fronts. The investors win because they're making money. The residents win because they have a better community. The city wins because it's driving more individuals into that community that are bringing in more jobs and more income for them. And at the end of the day, we win too because all of our partners are winning.
Hmm. How do you do that with, so it seems to me like probably about the time that you were maybe in 2017, 18, 19, it felt like everybody and their brother was a syndicator. And I would get my partners and I have 10,000 units or 5,000 units, whatever. And you do a little digging and it's like, you don't have any units. Your partner might have LP interest. And I feel, and it's subsided a little bit with the market and the shift and all that, but it feels like these folks that are out there are running the modern day equivalent of infomercials on how to get rich quick through real estate. Just, hey, come give me money. So how do you sculpt your practice so that you are not that? Because I know you and you are not that. So,
Yeah, that's a tough one because I think that you can portray or market to try to be anyone you actually are. You see all these people that we have 1,000 doors, as you mentioned.
yeah,
But of those people that talk about that, what I really want to know is, okay, you say you have 1,000 doors, but how many do you have direct control of? How many are you a true operator of
right.
or in the weeds of? Right. And very few and far between do you get the answer of, oh, I'm in the management day to day. I'm watching residents come in and move in and seeing applications. There aren't many individuals out there that are truly doing that piece of it. So I think that the negative of me being in the weeds is our growth trajectory. We slowed down significantly the last 3 years because
Hmm.
we were busy building the operations, the management side, and something that's sustainable and that can grow over time. So we lost, opportunities from that standpoint because we were focused on that. But I think long term, just like what you mentioned, the compounding capital where they're coming under the Prosper brand, we're seeing those marketers of the world that really were just focusing on raising capital start
Right.
to tag up with individuals like us that are the true operators that can really make a property and get it to where it needs to be. Because without property management and good processes, the best deals are going to sink.
For sure. You live and die by your management. Yeah,
Yep.
you can have yes, I 100% agree, so that's good. Awesome. What, I guess, as we wrap up here, what, you know, advice or thoughts would you have for other maybe aspiring entrepreneurs or existing? I don't know. How would you like to close it out?
Yeah. So anyone looking to get into real estate, if you're brand new, I get this question a lot. Hey, I want to get into real estate. How do I get started? There's two things that I would recommend. Number one is I think that I personally believe in buying a single family and house hacking, just getting into it and figuring it out. I'm a true
Yeah.
believer. That's how I got started. One, it cut my costs, right? It was cheaper to buy a house and fix it up than it was to rent. So it helped me there. I was building a little bit of equity, but then I had to figure out some things and problem solve. So one, that's the first piece. I truly believe in that house hacking model and really you're making some sacrifices on the front end and seeing if you truly want to do this long term. That's the first advice. The second advice, which I wish I would have done, would be to go and invest with someone like us and a syndicator. Maybe if you can even get with a smaller syndicator where you can bother a little bit and you can ride along their business model and learn from them. Because rightfully, you're now an investor and an LP. You have the right to ask questions and look
Hmm.
at a P&L, right? And it wouldn't be wrong for you to ask of how'd you do this or what'd you do this in this situation. So you're getting essentially free advice and an investor, so you're getting some upside. So
Right.
between those two, those would be the first things that I would recommend to get started and get in the business. And then you're going to realize if you truly want to be an operator or do single family or something else in the real estate ecosystem.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Awesome, man. DJ, I appreciate you making some time and spending some minutes here with me this afternoon. And what's the best way to get in touch with you if somebody's interested in maybe investing with you or just being in touch?
Yeah, so our website's prospercapitalco.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn. It's under DJ Hume. You can find me on Instagram, which is it's DJ Hume Official, always on Facebook. So any of those channels, feel free to message me, DM me, however you want to get a hold of me. Or if you want to just email me, it's dj@prospercapitalco.com. Love to be able to connect with anyone out there.
You're the man, DJ. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Steph.